This is Eric from Wisdom Heart. I received a question in email, and the question is this: is meditation a way of escaping reality? That's an important question in the context of today's spiritual marketplace, where there's so many options and so many promotions and so many practices that are available, and one can wonder, if you look at the marketing, is this an invitation to escape reality? Well, the short answer is your practice is determined by your intention. Intention is the key. And we can think of intention as being on a continuum in a sense. At one end of the continuum is the intention to get some relief. And at the other end of the continuum is the intention to promote or realize healing. Now, if you're leaning towards, and if your primary intention is relief, you may be using spiritual practices to escape from the reality, as it were, of the pain and the suffering that you're experiencing, your condition. And sometimes relief is exactly what is needed. You know, if you've been wearing your body down, working too hard, if you've been stressing in a challenging situation with people, events, or things, sometimes relief is absolutely what's needed. It's wisdom to get some rest, to get some renewal, to breathe, to get relief, and to regroup. But relief will not free you from the suffering. That's not what it's designed to do. Relief is designed to offer you relief. And relief is a temporary state. This is true even when, and perhaps definitely when, that relief is packaged in a form of spiritual practice. Because spiritual practice can provide relief. It's like this: when you're doing the practice, and you're really into it, you're chanting away, you're trance dancing away, you're doing the asana, sweating away, you're focusing on the object of meditation. When you're doing those, your mind's attention, your awareness, and your focus is not on the stressful thoughts, the situation, the people, events, and things. It's rather concentrated. In some contexts, it's swept up into the practice, and thus the suffering thoughts and the conflictual emotions are held in abeyance. And when they're held in abeyance, the weight of the suffering is lifted, and the internal conflicts and dramas and tensions are quieted. And the mind thinks it would be so good to stay here forever. And that's not going to happen, because relief, by its very nature, is temporary. It's a temporary state. It's not a permanent trait. It's short-lived. And when the effects of the relief wears off, when the endorphins settle down, when the mind returns to its everyday state, when the music stops, when the movement stops, then we are brought back to eye, back to those thoughts, those emotions again. And they show up. Why? Why do they keep showing up? Relief will not make them go away. Why do they keep showing up? Because they need your attention. And when you're using, and when we are using spiritual practices to seek relief, we're really not giving them the attention that they're crying for, that they're longing for. Because they're longing for attention, and not just any kind of attention, certainly not critical, judging, blaming, aversive attention. They're seeking healing attention. So what is healing attention? Which is going to move us on the continuum towards that healing experience. That's healing revelation. Healing attention is, think of it as a recipe. It's equal parts compassion, non-identification, and recognition. So compassion means that there's a caring and a feeling with the suffering of those thoughts and emotions. But there's also non-identification, which is to say not getting swept up in the drama internally, not swept up in the narrative, not becoming identified and entangled in the thoughts and emotions. Feeling, yes, but not identifying, which then opens us up to this wonderful possibility of recognition. So what is it that is recognized? We feel, we're non-identified, and then we can recognize the radiance. We can recognize the radiance from which all of those thoughts and emotions arise, and in that recognition, into which they relax. That recognition is what opens up this field of blessing that touches the thoughts and emotions, touches our own identity, and allows all of that to relax into the radiance, from which we then emerge with a new, renewed identity, which is more grounded, more linked to that primary recognition that I, my life, all beings, whatever is arising, is sourced from that radiance, and in its very heart, the very center of its nature, is that radiance. So there's no need for relief from it. Rather, there is the recognition how it is radiance, and in seeing that, allowing it to be released into its true nature, from which, again, we can reemerge with new wisdom, with new creativity, with new love. So when spiritual practice is focused on the healing end of the continuum, it's not an escape from reality. It's a turning towards everything that arises, and it's compassionate, non-identified, and recognizing, so that that healing presence can open and touch the body-mind very deeply. And when it does, there is that release. Now, sometimes those patterns, those knots, those tensions will just untangle and let go with a breath. And sometimes they won't. Sometimes they will fight back. Sometimes they will rant and rave. Sometimes they will hunker down. And this can cause us to want to then go for relief. It's just, we've headed towards healing, and then why isn't it done? Because it's a practice of cultivating a new relationship with your life, inwardly and outwardly. It's a practice of cultivating a capacity to recognize and reside in the radiance. And it's a practice of compassion and of non-identified witnessing that strengthens through practice. And then we cultivate, say it this way, we cultivate a taste for the healing end of the continuum. Regardless of what is arising, we recognize its radiance, and we recognize it's the radiance calling us, and so we welcome. Our nervous system still has a preference for relief. We know that, and we welcome that preference as well as we proceed more and more deeply, cultivating more and more intimacy with reality itself.